When people think of WWE, the image that usually comes to mind is that of massive, chiseled men, bodies carved from granite, muscles rippling in every direction. But not everyone in the ring fits that mold. Some wrestlers stepped into the spotlight with physiques that made fans do a double take and say, "Wait, seriously?" And yet, against all odds, these very same wrestlers managed to carve out legendary careers, despite bodies no one would want to imitate. Today on Wrestling Sphere, we're counting down 10 WWE superstars with the worst physiques in history, who still left a lasting impact like no one else. King Kong Bundy, the giant bulldozer with a bizarre build. King Kong Bundy was never the poster child for what a wrestler should look like. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches and weighing over 450 pounds, he looked more like a moving slab of meat than a professional athlete. No shredded abs. No defined chest. No V-shaped frame. If anything, Bundy resembled a giant thumb with legs. And yet, strangely enough, that awkward look became part of his trademark. In a world where wrestlers are usually defined by shredded physiques and muscle definition, Bundy stood out simply by being massive, bulky, and, let's face it, kinda clumsy. But don't let appearances fool you. He didn't need a six-pack or bulging biceps to make it to the top. Bundy broke barriers and headlined WrestleMania 2 against Hulk Hogan, an achievement most wrestlers only dream of. His presence in the ring wasn't about aesthetics, it was raw power, crushing momentum, and a beastly persona that screamed danger. For King Kong Bundy, his body wasn't a limitation, it was a spectacle. Every time he emerged through the smoke, you knew someone was about to get steamrolled. Andre the Giant. A giant in every sense of the word. Andre the Giant is one of the most iconic figures in professional wrestling history. He wasn't just beloved by fans, he became a full-blown cultural phenomenon. But if we're talking physiques, Andre was far from the shredded action figure look people usually associate with top-tier wrestlers. Towering over 7 feet tall and weighing between 500 to 520 pounds, Andre looked like a walking monument. His size was largely due to acromegaly, a disorder that caused abnormal growth of bones and tissues. But it wasn't just his genetics, it was his lifestyle that added to his infamous appearance. Legend has it that Andre could drink over 100 beers in a single sitting, casually. There are even photos of beer bottles dwarfed in his hand, looking like mini soy sauce bottles. That massive frame, combined with his indulgent habits, meant Andre's body was far from toned or athletic. But that never mattered. What made Andre special was that he didn't need to look like a superhero. Just walking into the arena, he could silence a crowd. He was a phenomenon, one of a kind. Andre the Giant didn't fit modern body standards, but he defined what it meant to be larger than life. Yokozuna, the moving mountain of mass. When it comes to turning sheer body weight into a deadly weapon, no one did it more effectively, or more terrifyingly, than Yokozuna. WWE billed him as a Japanese superstar, but in reality, he was a proud member of the legendary Samoan wrestling family, a clever twist from WWE's storytelling playbook. But it didn't matter where he was from. What truly set Yokozuna apart was the size of the man himself. His build weight was 589 pounds, and for once, that number wasn't exaggerated. What you saw was exactly what you got. With no visible waistline and zero muscle definition, he looked like a walking mountain, towering, massive, and impossible to ignore. The craziest part? He could move. Despite his size, Yokozuna had surprising agility that defied logic. And that bulk became his biggest advantage. Once he had a rival trapped in the corner, all they could do was pray, because when that enormous shadow came charging in, it was like watching a freight train made of flesh. And he wasn't just a novelty. Yokozuna earned his place in the record books. He remains the only man to defeat both Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan for the WWE Championship. No shredded abs. No bulging biceps. Just unstoppable mass and a cold, unshakable presence. Yokozuna wasn't just heavy in pounds, he was heavy in legacy. He didn't fit the mold of a classic wrestling body, and that's exactly why no one could ever forget him. Rkkeshi, WWE's money-making booty machine. When it comes to oversized wrestlers who still manage to win over the crowd, few names stand out like Rkkeshi. This Anoa'i family member didn't need a sculpted body or bulging muscles to draw attention. He just needed a massive butt. And yes, it was so iconic, It practically earned him a spot in WWE history all on its own. On his wrestling resume, under skills, Rkkeshi once simply wrote, "But." And he meant it. His signature move, the stink face, involved backing his opponent into a corner, and then smothering their face with his enormous behind. To some, it might have been the height of humiliation, but to WWE fans, it was peak entertainment. The crowd roared, Rkkeshi danced, and the arena came alive. Just imagine an alien turning on human TV and seeing a giant man rubbing his rear end on another man's face, while tens of thousands of people cheer. That alone would make them question our entire civilization. Rkkeshi's massive frame made him a star, but it also came with a price. When WWE asked him to slim down for health and mobility reasons, he refused. The result? WWE let him go in 2004. Big Daddy V, a walking fashion crime. It's hard to forget Big Daddy V whenever he stepped into the ring, and not because of his wrestling skills or lightning-fast agility. No, it was because of that outfit, one of the most visually shocking costumes in WWE history. Who thought it was a good idea to dress a 500-pound man in a single, thin strap stretching across his bare chest? Whoever came up with it deserves to be tried in fashion court. It was visual chaos unleashed upon millions of unsuspecting viewers. Big Daddy V, previously known as Viscera, had a body that defied all fitness norms. The term waistline didn't apply. Ripped physique. Forget it. He was sheer size and mass, so much so that fans genuinely wondered how the ring didn't collapse under him. Ironically, that unforgettable look became his most memorable asset. In classic WWE fashion, they turned a weakness into a brand. Big Daddy V became a so bad it's iconic figure, instantly recognizable, yet completely one of a kind. Of course, people don't remember him for 5-star matches. They remember the strap, the sweaty skin, and the performance style that was equal parts cringe and captivating. If there's a ranking of the most outlandish bodies in WWE history, Big Daddy V is easily a top contender, because he shattered every standard the moment he showed up. Mick Foley, WWE's lovable mess of a legend. Mick Foley didn't need six-pack abs or a chiseled body to become a legend. In fact, he's living proof that you can look like a random uncle who wandered into a backyard barbecue, and still earn the respect of the entire WWE universe. Part of Foley's undeniable appeal was his disheveled, lovable everyman style that made fans both cheer for him and chuckle at him. Whether he was Cactus Jack, Mankind, or Dude Love, Mick always looked like he had just crawled out of a dumpster after a half-finished nap. Wild hair, wrinkled flannel shirts, scruffy beard, and beat-up sneakers that looked like they were borrowed from a lost-and-found bin, it all made him the most relatable man in wrestling. Foley's body was never his greatest weapon. He didn't have bulging biceps or a superhero frame, but he had something most never dare to show: insane courage. This is the man who threw himself off a 16-foot steel cage, crashed through tables, broke his teeth through his nose, and kept wrestling like nothing happened. From a distance, you'd think he was a lost hitchhiker, until he made you believe in his pain and passion. Mick Foley may not have had a photogenic physique, but he's carved into WWE history. On a list of the worst bodies in wrestling, he absolutely deserves a spot, not because he was bad, but because he made bad iconic. Kamala, the round-bellied jungle warrior. Kamala, also known as the Ugandan Giant, was one of the strangest, most unforgettable characters to ever enter WWE. Looking like he stepped out of an 80s jungle adventure movie, Kamala wore a tattered skirt, walked barefoot, painted his face white, and proudly displayed a big, round belly adorned with a hand-painted moon. It wasn't just for show, it was part of the act. He would often slap his stomach like a tribal drum, creating deep, echoing thumps that were equal parts hilarious and unsettling. Every time his belly jiggled, it rippled like a pond after a stone hit it. And instead of applauding wrestling technique, the crowd usually erupted in laughter at the bizarre and oddly mesmerizing spectacle. Looking at Kamala, you didn't think of titles or technical mastery. But here's a surprising fact. Kamala once faced Daniel Bryan in a world title match in Ring of Honor. Yes, really. One of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time once squared off against the moon-bellied brawler. That matchup is stranger than Kamala's entire gimmick. With a slow, clunky style and a body far from balanced or athletic, Kamala still left his mark. And on this list of wrestling's worst physiques, he earns his place, if only for having the most memorable belly in WWE history. Colin Delaney, a crumpled sheet of paper in a land of giants. If there were an award for least likely to survive a wrestling match, Colin Delaney would be a frontrunner, and not because of his weight, since he barely had any. His whole gimmick was clear from day one. He was born to lose. The kind of guy who only wins if the stars align, the sun explodes, and his opponent accidentally knocks themselves out. Physically speaking, WWE has never had anyone look quite as fragile as Colin. In a world where arms are often the size of tree trunks, Delaney looked like he'd just walked out of a library, thin as a midterm paper. He had so little muscle that describing him as a burnt dictionary wouldn't be that far off. Weird, sure, but strangely accurate. Whenever he stepped into the ring, he was the guy getting thrown, stomped, folded, and occasionally blown away by a strong gust of wind. But that's exactly why fans remembered him, not for his strength, but because he seemed so breakable. Colin Delaney is the kind of wrestler you don't know whether to cheer for or protect. He didn't look the part, but that's what made him unforgettable. And even if his body didn't scream WWE superstar, his bizarre presence still earned him a strange, yet solid place in wrestling history. Spike Dudley, a light breeze in a storm of muscle. In a world where 260-pound giants are hailed like gods, Spike Dudley looked more like a post-it note lost in the middle of an epic novel. He was so light, it honestly felt like a strong sneeze could send him flying out of the ring. Someone once joked that Spike's weight was about the same as a framed photo of himself, and strangely, it kind of made sense. But if you judged Spike Dudley by his skinny frame, you'd be dead wrong. Sure, he looked like a lost 8th grader who accidentally wandered into a weight room, but this guy survived, and even thrived, in one of the most brutal environments WWE has ever known. He got slammed through tables, tossed out of rings, and battered from all sides, yet he always stood back up with a crooked smile that said, "Is that all you've got?" For scrawny kids, like I once was, Spike Dudley was a symbol of hope. Watching him throw himself into chaos made you believe that you didn't have to be the biggest, the strongest, or the coolest guy in the room to make your mark. You just had to be tough, fearless, and willing to get snapped in half like a dry noodle. Spike didn't have a great body, but he had something many muscle-bound stars didn't: real courage. And that's why he belongs on this list, not as a joke, but as a reminder that a bad physique doesn't mean a weak heart. Big Dick Johnson, the sweaty, shiny belly of WWE nightmares. Christopher DeJoseph. Now that name sounds respectable. Today, he's one of the top creative minds behind Lucha Underground, a company known for its rich storytelling and unique wrestling flair. Sounds professional and serious, right? But once upon a time, things were very different. Yes, Christopher DeJoseph once played Big Dick Johnson, a character whose name alone screamed, "This can't be real." With a flabby, jiggling belly that moved like jello every time he walked, Johnson didn't come out to wrestle, he came out to dance. Wearing nothing but a tight pair of briefs and slathered in baby oil, he would burst into serious backstage segments and completely derail them with awkward, greasy striptease-style moves that left the crowd both stunned and speechless. There was one moment when he showed up unexpectedly and did something unexplainable to The Miz live on TV. That single segment was enough to make everyone watching ask themselves, is this still wrestling, or a test of mental endurance? If there were gods watching over humanity at that moment, they surely looked away in shame. And so, Big Dick Johnson, armed with zero muscle tone, a wobbling gut, and way too much oil, unquestionably takes the #1 spot on the list of WWE's worst physiques of all time. A champion of cringe, and an icon no one asked for. Hastax Calhoun. How could a man weighing over 600 pounds become the very image of a gentle giant? The answer was Hastax Calhoun, a man so massive that just standing still made the wrestling ring seem smaller, yet his face always carried a warm, good-natured smile. Born William D. Calhoun in Texas, he entered the wrestling world as if it had been waiting for him. From the moment he stepped into the spotlight, his sheer size was impossible to ignore. But Calhoun's charm wasn't just in the numbers, it was in how he made his frame part of the story. He was imposing, yet approachable. He was instantly recognizable in his simple denim overalls, bare feet, and the oversized horseshoe hanging from his neck, a symbol fans knew meant the country giant had arrived. In the ring, he didn't rely on high-flying moves or complex holds. A single body press or just sitting on his opponent was usually enough to end the match. From the 1950s through the late 1970s, Calhoun was a fixture in major promotions, especially shining in tag team matches. In the ring, he thrilled the crowds. Outside of it, he was generous with his time, shaking hands and chatting with fans. Hastax Calhoun proved that being big didn't have to mean being intimidating. Sometimes, a mountain can be a place where people find warmth and joy. Martin Ruan, Giant Hastax. If anyone could truly define the word giant in professional wrestling, it was Martin Ruan, better known to fans as Giant Hastax. He wasn't just tall. He was a moving wall of humanity. Standing 6 feet 11 inches and weighing over 690 pounds, every step he took seemed to make the ring shake, carrying a pressure that could intimidate an opponent before the match even began. Born in 1946 in Camberwell to an Irish family, Ruan moved to Salford as a child. Before ever lacing up wrestling boots, he worked jobs that demanded brute strength, including construction and nightclub security. Even before becoming a pro, his size and power left lasting impressions. He debuted in 1967 as Luke McMasters, but it was in the 1970s, after adopting the name Giant Hastax, that his career exploded. His legendary clashes with Big Daddy became some of the most iconic moments in British wrestling history, drawing millions of TV viewers. Hastax didn't stay confined to Europe. He brought his massive frame and fearsome reputation to Canada under the name Loch Ness Monster, and later appeared in WCW as part of the infamous Dungeon of Doom. Outside the ring, he was a quiet, deeply religious man who valued family above all else. Married at 17, he remained devoted to his wife for life and was the proud father of 3 sons. To fans, Giant Hastax was more than just a wrestler. He was a living legend and a reminder of a time when pure size and power were enough to make the whole world take notice. Which of today's uniquely built superstars impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Wrestling Sphere so you never miss the wildest stories from the world of WWE.